We talked about a date in the first segment. Well, 75. That's the number of days since Hurricane Sandy slammed into our region. Obviously, we know what that left behind: damage, scars, pain, losses. A lot of people still feeling to this day. Just talk to the folks along the coastlines of our region. So when will D.C. step up and approve the aid that we really need here? This isn't lip service. This is real. It doesn't matter Republican or Democrat. You hear it from governors in our region and other electeds. Now, a vote is scheduled for next week in Washington. But when you know it, just like the last time, there's word that some in Congress are looking to decrease, delay, or even sink that assistance. And Andrew, the play-by-play of what they're considering reads like a how-to when it comes to obstruction and dysfunction.
Yeah, it's not going to make a lot of friends for Congress in our region. Rich, their strategy, if you want to call it that, was outlined by Politico in a piece entitled GOP Amendments Could Derail Sandy Aid Again. Here's what you need to know. You'll recall Governors Christie and Cuomo asked Congress for $60 billion in storm aid, and after quashing a vote following the fiscal cliff deal, House met last week and approved just $9 billion, all for flood insurance, leaving D.C. $51 billion short of the total requested. Now the game plan for the House next week, likely Tuesday, will be to approve just $17 billion more and send that over to the Senate. Then lawmakers will reportedly consider another $33 billion in aid, which could bring the total up to $60 billion. But that $33 billion is going to be open to amendments and catches, and that's where all the trouble could start. Among the possible amendments, a requirement that the cash all be paid for with offsetting spending cuts, or an across-the-board plan for spending cuts, or an end to some specific programs, combined with a required audit examining how any aid money is spent. But the more stringent the cuts or the audits proposed, the more likely those requirements could kill the entire aid package. And in a twist, Politico says two New Jersey Republicans, Representative Rodney Frelinghuysen and Representative Scott Garrett, could be enlisted in the formalities of all that maneuvering in the House. Now, attaching those stings to disaster relief would only delay recovery for thousands and add insult to actual injuries. It's also just about unprecedented when it comes to assistance in the wake of massive disasters. It's a step Congress did not require when voting aid for any number of other hurricanes like Katrina in recent years, nor for bills to help victims of tornadoes, nor for victims of earthquakes, even quakes in solidly blue states like California. And keep in mind, Congress put absolutely no restrictions on the blank checks written to pay for the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. In fact, only one major event of similar scope has received this kind of fiscal scrutiny and strings attached requirements in the past 15 years. Aid to help New York recover in the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks, Rich, and to help the first responders.
You were in New York when they were fighting about money, and we're talking about this morning when that story came down. People with shorter memories may not remember, but I remember the outrage when some folks from outside the area, lawmakers, were saying we're holding up the money, and then people, Republican and Democrats in New York, you're like, you better not show your face here on the year anniversary. Is it a geographic thing? Does New York get shafted where different parts of the country because it is New York?
You know, I'd hate to think that that's the case, but I mean, clearly this is just an outrage. As a Republican, I'm really ticked off at the Republican members of Congress for this nonsense. They originally asked for $80 billion. It got scaled back to $60 billion. Yep. And for them to wait almost, Katrina, I think the money was flowing 9 days later. Andrew, 15 days later. I mean, they've waited 75 days now, and it is really an outrage. And Republicans should be calling their Republican members down here to say enough is enough. There are people freezing on Staten Island still, and people don't even pay attention to this anymore, and that's part of the problem. They need to move and move quickly. The one thing I will say is the only disappointment that I have in this whole thing is that, when you hear that there's $125 million for something in Alaska that's thrown into this nonsense, that just, and quite frankly, when you're talking about these dollars, to hold it up for that stupid stuff. Ridiculous. But I don't know why they can never, and they do this all the time. When they did the bailout, at the end of the Bush administration, they throw all this nonsense into it. They need $60 billion for the clean.
Just do a clean bill.
Exactly. Just give them a clean bill, and then the Republicans would have no harping to do at all.
Help me out on, I'm sorry, Andrew. Help me out on just, I know that Pete King and Grimm, two Republicans in New York, screamed louder than anybody. As much as any Democrat, they were that PO'd at Boehner and the rest for how they did it before they made him come back and vote on that Friday. But why would Garrett and Frelinghuysen put their names to something that's carrying conditions to this thing? Why would those guys want to have any attachment to something that could blow up here instead of a clean bill?
I don't know. I'd have to research that more because clearly they cannot be perceived in slowing this up.
They're
Freeland
actually
is my
requesting more.
Yeah, they're going to be
in
requesting
this,
more in this because
and
he's
likely having it with strings attached.
Right, he's my Republican congressman in New Jersey. You know, the interesting thing about this whole thing is that this really was a fight between Boehner and Cantor. Boehner got very annoyed at Cantor because Cantor turned his back on Boehner as he was going through the negotiations on the fiscal cliff, and then Cantor had taken the lead on getting the Sandy money, and Boehner sort of said, so it became a stupid fight within the Republican leadership.
People at home hate politicians.
You're exactly right. But I really believe that this will get done. But we do need to keep, the pressure on. The money will come. The $60 billion will come. But the people should not have to wait this long.
I'm curious. Peter King, after the vote was delayed the first time, said, any Republican in our region who wants to give money to these guys in Congress, you should have his head examined.
Yeah.
Is that a way to get the rest of the party in line? Don't be looking to New York as your ATM for your next campaign.
Andrew, the problem with that is that as we just had the gun discussion, that comment will be forgotten 3 months from now.
Yeah.
So they'll be back next summer raising money in New York, and people in New York will be giving them money because it's in their self-interest to support people. That's the sad part.
There may be some donors in Breezy Point who aren't going to be giving.
Yeah, no, that's the point.
Don, the geography question. Zadroga. Zadroga took 10 years. And there is a bias, I think. And I can't put my finger on what it is. It's like New York can afford it, or do you think it's that they don't want to help New York?
I'm listening to Tom, and he's saying he's outraged at his party on this issue. But I don't know if this is really that much of an issue. I wouldn't jump the gun on this one because it always takes a little bit of time. And on these big ones, I haven't seen a decent memory. Well, give me one example. But besides Katrina, where the money has come.
All of them. There was a thing last week, and you can go back and look at it. This is by far, most of them were 9 days, 15 days, 2 weeks. Within that quick time frame, the money started flowing. This took 66 plus days, I think 69 days in the end for the money to come at all. Way farther than any other
one thing we do agree on, people are freezing. Everyone
They
at
are.
this table agrees with that. And people need housing, and we can go down the list of what they need. I believe, as Tom said, as Andrew said, that the money will come. But there's no doubt about it, there's a bias. And here's where the bias goes. There's a belief, states like Alabama, different, that we waste money. Those Northerners, that they spend, that they contribute more than what they get. You know the formula that I'm talking about. And I'm not saying it is accurate at all.
It's not.
But it's not accurate.
It's the opposite. Right?
It's the exact opposite. But that perception is out there.
Well, I keep thinking of that salsa ad where they're like New York City. I think that there's a little bit of a.
Well, the other thing is, and I hate to bring in because, listen, I think that like when you had Katrina happen, okay, you had a very race-sensitive issue down there.
And that's why it happened so fast. I didn't want to go there.
Well,
but-
I went there because I think that when you had Kanye West, do that sort of nonsense about Bush didn't care because there was a bunch of African Americans, we don't have that situation here. You have a bunch of middle-class white people along the Jersey Shore, and it's just not.
People
It's
who don't
not
follow
right.
politics like us. Listen, this isn't one of those things that politics should be coming into.
At
This is
all.
not a party thing, but somehow,
Disasters,
some way
but
it
it's
is.
part of the
never
Republican
should.
agenda. Pay for it before you get it. That's their new agenda.
On this one,
That's the new
All right, we got to
but-
take a break here. I'm sorry, guys. But when we come back, Chris Christie, rock star. Terrific poll numbers through the roof here. But yet, you got challenges going on. And I want to ask Tom here, there's an opportunity for Republicans. They're not grabbing it. We're going to talk about where the party goes from here. Stay with us.